It doesn't begin as loneliness, it begins as peace. There's a kind of stillness that feels like oxygen after years of holding your breath, a space where no one asks, "What's wrong?" A silence that doesn't need filling. You sit there, in the soft hum of nothingness, and for the first time, your body isn't bracing for the next demand, the next misunderstanding, the next small betrayal that comes from being known. You tell yourself you've always liked being alone. You romanticize it. Call it independence, call it clarity, call it just who I am. And maybe it's true. Maybe you do love your solitude. But deep down, it's not just preference, it's protection. Because in this quiet, nothing can go wrong. No one can leave, no one can disappoint you. The walls are steady, the room predictable, the air gentle. Psychologically, solitude can be both a refuge and a reaction, a safe house built out of necessity, not choice. When the world outside feels unsafe, your own company becomes the only place where your nervous system can rest. You don't have to pretend here. You don't have to explain or shrink or translate yourself into something more palatable. Alone, you can finally exhale. But what happens when safety becomes isolation? When the silence that once soothed you starts to echo? This is where the story begins, not in loneliness, but in the invisible comfort of distance. Because for some of us, being alone doesn't feel empty. It feels like the only place left where we still feel whole. It's hard to pinpoint when it started, that quiet shift from enjoying your own space to needing it to survive. It might have been a betrayal so small no one else noticed, or a parent who loved inconsistently, warm one moment, cold the next. Maybe it was the friend who turned your secrets into stories, or the lover who made affection feel like a gamble. At some point your mind drew the connection, closeness equals danger, and your body believed it. From that day on, distance felt like protection. You didn't mean to become guarded. You were just learning the math of safety, subtracting people to minimize pain. Psychologists call this a form of adaptive behavior. When vulnerability leads to harm, the brain adapts by avoiding exposure altogether. What starts as a coping mechanism becomes a worldview. If I'm alone, I can't be hurt. But the price is subtle. Each time you pull away, you also pull a piece of yourself with it. The part that still hopes to be held, to be seen, to be understood. And yet, the paradox is cruel. The more you protect yourself, the less protected you feel. Because the danger was never just out there. It's in the way you stopped trusting the possibility of warmth. You build walls so high they start to feel like home. You call them boundaries, but deep down you know they're fortresses. This is how safety becomes a solo act, not because you crave isolation, but because connection once felt like walking barefoot through glass. And after enough cuts, even peace starts to look like silence. People will tell you you're strong, that you don't need anyone, that your self-sufficiency is admirable, and you'll smile because it's easier than explaining that independence wasn't a choice. It was the only way to stay safe. You learned early that relying on others came with consequences. Maybe your needs were met with guilt. Maybe your feelings were dismissed as too much. Maybe the people who were supposed to hold you dropped you instead. So you stopped reaching, you stopped asking, you stopped needing. What looked like strength was really self-preservation. Psychologists call this defensive independence, the illusion of strength that develops when dependency once led to pain. It feels empowering on the surface, but underneath it's a quiet fear. If I rely on someone, they might fail me. If I stay alone, at least I can't be disappointed. You become the reliable one, the helper, the friend who never needs rescuing. You build your identity around being the one who doesn't flinch, who doesn't crumble, who doesn't ask. And yet, inside, a part of you is exhausted from carrying the weight of never being allowed to fall apart. Because real independence isn't the absence of need. It's the ability to trust that your needs won't destroy the connection. But when safety has always meant solitude, trust feels like walking into a storm without shelter. So you tell yourself it's better this way, that you're built for aloneness, and slowly that story becomes your skin. The tragedy is, no one can see the fear beneath the strength, and you're too practiced to show it. There's a certain kind of silence that feels peaceful to others, but electric to you. A quiet room, a soft voice, even the absence of conflict. Instead of relaxing, you tense. Your body doesn't trust calm anymore. This is what psychologists call hypervigilance. It's the nervous system's way of saying, I don't believe we're safe. It's not paranoia, it's conditioning. Because when danger once lived in your relationships, your body learned to scan for threats, even in love. You start reading tone like it's Morse code. You sense shifts in energy before words are spoken. You prepare for abandonment long before it happens. When people get close, your chest tightens, not because you dislike them, but because connection has become synonymous with risk. Your body remembers every betrayal, every broken promise, every moment someone's affection turned sharp. And so, even when you want closeness, your nervous system braces for impact. This is why solitude feels so soothing. Alone, your body finally stops scanning. The silence that once scared you becomes sanctuary. No one to monitor, no one to decode, no one to disappoint you. But peace built on avoidance is fragile, because the same stillness that protects you also isolates you. Your body may be calm, but your heart grows lonelier with each day of safety. Healing begins when you teach your nervous system that calm can coexist with connection. That stillness doesn't always mean danger is coming. Sometimes it means you've finally arrived. And that maybe, just maybe, peace doesn't have to mean being alone. At some point, you made a promise to yourself. You might not remember when or why, but it's there, written quietly in the spaces between your relationships. It says, I'll never let anyone hurt me again. That vow becomes invisible armor. You carry it into every interaction, every friendship, every love. It shapes how you speak, what you reveal, and what you withhold. You keep parts of yourself locked away, not because you want to be mysterious, but because you've learned that openness comes with consequences. Every time you distance yourself, every time you say, I'm fine, instead of I'm hurt, you're honoring that old contract. It kept you alive once, it kept you sane. But over time, it starts to cost more than it protects, because the armor doesn't just keep danger out, it keeps tenderness out too. Psychologically, this is called emotional withdrawal, a defense mechanism rooted in early experiences of rejection or instability. Your mind equates closeness with chaos, so it creates predictability through distance. You stop asking for reassurance. You stop expecting understanding. You start believing that safety and connection cannot exist in the same room. And yet that belief is the true source of your loneliness, because the vow you made wasn't wrong. It was just outdated. It was written by a version of you that didn't yet know that safety can exist without solitude. The tragedy is that you've become loyal to your pain. You've mistaken self-protection for peace, and breaking that contract feels like betrayal, even when it's the only path to freedom. You tell yourself you prefer it this way, that you like the quiet, the control, the freedom. You say you're too busy for drama, too grounded for neediness, too self-aware for dependence. And some of that's true, but not all of it. Because somewhere beneath the comfort of solitude, there's a low hum of longing, the kind that only shows up when the world goes still. You feel it at midnight when the lights are off. You feel it in the hollow after a long day, when you realize no one saw any of it happen. You scroll, you listen to music, you fill the space, but the ache remains. It's not about wanting company, it's about wanting connection that feels safe enough to stay. Psychologically, this is disguised loneliness, the kind that hides under competence. You're not socially isolated, you're emotionally isolated. You've built a life so stable that there's no room for anyone to enter. But loneliness doesn't always sound like sadness. Sometimes it sounds like overthinking. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Sometimes it looks like busyness, a distraction from the silence that follows when you stop moving. You tell yourself solitude is strength, but deep down you know it's also surrender. Because the truth is, you don't just want to be alone, you want to be understood without fear. And that kind of safety can't be found in empty rooms. It's found when you risk letting someone see you before you've cleaned up the mess. That's the loneliness you don't admit. Not the absence of people, but the absence of being known. There's a moment that happens just before you pull away. A flicker, almost invisible when someone gets too close. Maybe they say something kind, maybe they see a part of you no one else has noticed. And instead of warmth, you feel panic. Your body reacts before your mind can explain why. A tightness in your chest, a sudden urge to retreat. They didn't do anything wrong. They just got close enough to touch the wound. Underneath your composure, there's a very old fear. If I let someone in, they'll see the real me and leave. This is what psychologists call anticipatory abandonment. It's not irrational. It's learned. When connection in your past came with pain, rejection, or emotional volatility, your nervous system began to equate intimacy with loss. So now when someone offers care, you don't feel loved, you feel exposed. When someone stays, you wonder for how long. When someone reaches out, you look for the hidden condition. Distance becomes your safety mechanism, not because you want to be alone, but because being alone feels less risky than being disappointed again. You start believing you're better on your own, but that's not confidence. It's armor. It's the mind saying, if I leave first, at least I won't be left. And so you live between contradictions, craving closeness while fearing it, longing for love while preparing for loss. You call it independence, but really it's grief. Because every time you choose distance, you're choosing safety over possibility. And even though it keeps you from pain, it also keeps you from peace. No one is born afraid of love. We learn it, slowly, through the rhythm of how we're held, seen, and spoken to. For people who feel safer alone, the lesson often began early. Maybe your caregivers were unpredictable, loving one day, dismissive the next. Maybe affection came with strings attached. Maybe the house was calm but emotionally cold, where silence carried more meaning than words. Children in those environments develop what psychologists call an avoidant attachment style. It's not a flaw. It's a brilliant adaptation. When love feels inconsistent, the child learns. It's safer not to need too much. They shrink their emotions to keep the peace. They become low maintenance, hyper-capable, the ones who don't make trouble. They learn to rely on themselves because no one else feels reliable, and that child grows into an adult who confuses detachment with maturity. They don't ask for help. They don't show their pain. They love quietly, cautiously, always with one foot outside the door just in case. It's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that their nervous system doesn't trust it. Connection feels like standing on thin ice, beautiful, thrilling, and one wrong move from disaster. But the truth is, those early lessons were written in survival mode. They kept you safe when you were small, but they don't have to define you now. Because safety isn't the same as solitude, and love doesn't have to hurt to be real. To heal, you don't have to tear down your walls overnight. You only have to remember that they were built by a child who just wanted to feel safe. And that child deserves to learn what safety feels like with someone, not just away from them. You crave connection. You want to be known, seen, chosen. You dream about a love that feels calm instead of consuming, but every time it starts to get close, something inside you retreats. It's not that you don't care, it's that you care so much it terrifies you. You text slower, you overthink your replies, you convince yourself they're too much or not enough. You analyze silence until it becomes rejection. And eventually, you pull away, not because you stopped feeling, but because you started feeling too much. Then the loneliness returns, and you mistake it for proof. See, I'm better alone. That's the trap, the cycle of emotional isolation. Psychologists describe this as a self-fulfilling pattern. The mind avoids intimacy to prevent hurt, but the resulting distance creates the very emptiness it feared. Each withdrawal reinforces the belief that solitude is the only safe place. You tell yourself it's freedom, but deep down it's fatigue, the exhaustion of constant vigilance. You want to let someone in, but the moment you start to, your body tightens, your instincts warn you, and you obey. It's not logic, it's memory. So you oscillate between longing and retreat, connection and silence. And because the pattern is invisible, you start to believe it's just who you are. But you're not cold. You're protecting something tender. You're not detached. You're defending a heart that still remembers what it was like to be unguarded, and how much it hurt. Breaking this cycle doesn't mean throwing the doors open. It means daring, one moment at a time, to stay when you want to run. Control feels like safety, schedules, boundaries, routines, all the ways you make sure nothing can catch you off guard. You keep your world predictable, tidy, contained. But beneath that order lives a quiet truth. You don't actually feel calm. You feel prepared. There's a difference. Control whispers, "As long as I manage everything, I'll be okay." But what it really means is, I don't trust life to hold me if I let go. When love once meant chaos, and vulnerability meant exposure, control becomes the new religion. You micromanage your emotions, censor your words, anticipate outcomes before they happen. You think if you can foresee every possibility, you'll avoid disappointment. But control doesn't prevent pain, it prevents presence. It keeps you one step removed from the very experiences that could soften you. Psychologists call this compensatory control, when people use order and predictability to soothe hidden anxiety. It's not weakness, it's intelligence. Your mind is doing what it was trained to do, minimize threat. The problem is, connection is unpredictable by nature. It requires surrender, the willingness to not know what will happen and stay anyway. You don't have to lose your structure to heal. You only have to notice when control stops serving peace and starts serving fear. Because peace doesn't come from mastering everything around you. It comes from learning that you can survive the things you can't control. Somewhere along the way, your mind started sorting the world into two categories: alone or hurt. If you're alone, you're safe. If you're connected, you're vulnerable. There's no middle ground. This is the false binary of trauma, the mind's way of simplifying danger. When pain once came from people, solitude became synonymous with survival. Your nervous system learned to view connection not as nourishment, but as exposure. So now, even small acts of closeness, a compliment, a long look, a promise, feel suspicious. You wait for the moment it turns, for the warmth to fade, for the other shoe to drop, and when it doesn't, you often drop it yourself. You pull away, start a fight, make a joke, change the subject, anything to re-establish distance, because safety has been wired to mean separation. But the truth is, safety isn't binary. It isn't either or. You can be with someone and still be with yourself. You can be open and still have boundaries. Psychologically, this shift is called integration, allowing opposites to coexist. It's the moment you realize that connection doesn't always equal chaos, and solitude doesn't always mean peace. Healing begins the first time you stay in the middle space, that fragile, unfamiliar ground between closeness and withdrawal. At first, it feels unbearable, then it feels possible, because safety was never meant to mean alone. It was meant to mean safe enough to stay. Even when your mind wants to trust, your body sometimes refuses. You say you're ready. You tell yourself it's time, but then someone hugs you and your shoulders stiffen. Someone compliments you and your stomach twists. Someone loves you and you flinch. This isn't resistance, it's residue. The body remembers what the mind tries to move past. Psychologists call this somatic memory. When emotional pain is repeated enough times, the nervous system learns to anticipate it. The body becomes the guard, flinching before danger even arrives. That's why healing isn't just cognitive. You can understand everything about your childhood, your attachment style, your trauma, and still feel unsafe when someone looks at you with too much kindness. Because safety isn't an idea, it's a sensation, and your body hasn't felt it in a long time. You've trained yourself to appear calm, but inside, you're monitoring every tone, every pause, every change in rhythm. You call it intuition, but it's vigilance, and that's okay. It kept you alive. But now it's keeping you lonely. To heal, the body has to unlearn its reflex to close. That doesn't mean forcing yourself open. It means noticing the tension, breathing into it, staying present while it softens. Each time you let someone's kindness land without pulling away, each time you stay still instead of retreating, you're rewriting the script. It's not quick work. It's slow, physical, human work. Because the walls don't just live in your mind, they live under your skin. And the body only lets them fall when it finally believes. This time, you're safe. For most of your life, safety meant space. Distance from chaos, from confusion, from anyone who could hurt you. But healing asks something harder. To find safety not away from people, but with them. At first, it feels impossible. You've built a quiet empire out of solitude, and now you're being asked to open its gates. But connection doesn't have to mean surrender. It can mean sharing the same air while still breathing your own. Psychologists call this earned security, the process of building new, safe attachments that gently overwrite the old ones. It doesn't happen through grand gestures or declarations. It happens in the micro moments, when someone listens without fixing you, when they stay even after seeing your mess, when they prove through time that they're consistent. That's how your body learns. Maybe this closeness isn't a trap. Maybe I can exhale here. Relearning safety doesn't mean losing your solitude. It means expanding it, realizing that you can still be yourself, still have your space, even while someone stands beside you. You don't have to abandon your independence to connect. You just have to let it evolve, from armor into choice. Safety used to mean being untouchable. Now it starts to mean being reachable, not because you need saving, but because you finally believe you deserve gentleness. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is stay in the room with someone who feels safe and let your guard down, even just a little. Because love isn't what breaks you. It's what helps you rest. Healing doesn't happen with declarations like, "I'm ready now." It happens in small, ordinary moments. Quiet acts of courage that seem insignificant but change everything. It happens the first time you admit you're tired and let someone see it. The first time you tell the truth instead of saying, "I'm fine." The first time you stop rehearsing how you'll be perceived and just let yourself exist. These moments are microscopic, but to your nervous system, they're revolutionary. Each one tells your body, connection can be safe again. Psychologists call this exposure with regulation, gradually letting yourself experience vulnerability while staying grounded. You don't have to tear your walls down in one day. You just have to leave the door unlocked for a while. You'll notice that trust doesn't arrive all at once. It tiptoes in quietly, testing the air. Sometimes it'll feel too much and you'll retreat. That's okay. Healing is a dance between closeness and space. Forward, back, forward again. What matters is that you keep returning, and when you do, something shifts. The silence no longer feels heavy, it feels shared. The room no longer feels like escape, it feels like peace. Trust isn't about guaranteeing no one will hurt you. It's about knowing that if they do, you'll survive. And you won't abandon yourself this time, because that's what healing really is. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to stay gentle in its presence. Each time you let someone see a little more of the real you, the unfiltered, unguarded human you, you're not losing safety. You're finding it again. There's a kind of solitude that feels different after healing. It's not the kind built on fear or self-protection. It's quieter, lighter, alive. You're still alone, but this time it doesn't ache. You make coffee for yourself, not because no one's there to share it, but because you enjoy your own company. You read, walk, think, rest, not to escape connection, but to reconnect with yourself. The silence that once felt like exile now feels like homecoming. Because this time, you chose it. That's the difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation is the absence of safety. Solitude is the presence of peace. Psychologically, this is integration. When the parts of you that once split apart finally meet in the same room. The self that craved love and the self that feared it begin to coexist. You no longer need to run or hide. You can love without losing yourself. You can be alone without feeling abandoned. You realize that being safe alone was never the problem. The problem was believing that aloneness was the only way to be safe. Now you know safety can exist in both places, inside your own silence and within someone's arms. You no longer need the armor. You can choose solitude when you want it and connection when you're ready, because safety was never about the absence of people. It was about finally coming home to yourself. So if you're someone who feels safer alone, know this. Nothing about you is broken. You built distance because you had to. You learned self-sufficiency because the world once asked you to survive without help. And you did. But safety doesn't have to mean solitude forever. It can also mean warmth, softness, laughter that fills the room. It can mean letting love in slowly, at your own pace, until it no longer feels like a risk, just a rhythm. Healing isn't about tearing down your walls overnight. It's about learning that they were never meant to be prisons, only shelters until it was safe to step outside again. So take your time. Keep the quiet if you love it. But don't forget, the same heart that found safety in solitude also deserves to feel safe in connection. You're not too independent. You're not too guarded. You're someone who protected themselves beautifully. And now you get to rest. You get to breathe. You get to choose love, not because you need it to survive, but because you're finally safe enough to receive it.